Look here, I be on the paper chase. I'm all about my cheddar. I ain't touching the mic if it ain't 5 G's or better. I plan to never fall short. Again, I won't gain. Boy, I'ma tell you, no pain, no gain. I hustle hard for what I want, that's how I get it. I struggle hard, and if it's out there, I'm gon' get it. If you see Ciamara, a $sign on the CD, somewhere on there you'll see featuring the BG. Me and my nigga B, like Suge and Pop, we getting our shine on all the way to the top. Look, ain't no stopping us, boy, don't try. When you hear once, it ain't no secret you going by. You could lie about this, stunt about that. You can't die these 50 shots, I'm about to rat-tat-tat. Ain't nothing changed, still a buster wig splitter. Straight hustle for my cheese, I'm a money go get about my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate kill 'em. I'm about my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate kill 'em. It's all about Benjamins, that's all I wanna have. Dust off in my house with a hoe taking a bubble bath. Sparkling marble, covering all my room floors. A maid in a bathing suit doing my house chores. Do not disturb sign on my bedroom door, cause my dick getting ate by my #1 whore. Look, I'm money hungry, about acting a donkey. No longer a junkie, I got rid of that monkey. I'm cheeky, I don't want you fucking with my shit. My neck and my knuckles covered with crushed out shit. Sparkling gold cover my motherfucking grill. Pockets filled with big head $100 bills. Fucking up this rap game with these wicked rap skills. And ain't far from making G's to making meals. I'm a trill BG, uptown hard hitter. On the real, my nigga, I'm a money go get about my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate kill 'em. About my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody try to stop you, kill 'em. Oh, I gotta get it, gotta grab it, gotta have it. Like snorting dope or snorting coke, it's a habit. I gotta see it, gotta feel it, quick to spin it. Shoot dice all day with my niggas, trying to win it. I rap hustle, cause I'm a hustling ass nigga. Also a get told about busting some ass nigga. So you come play with me, about my cheese, you gotta go fool. In a casket, 6 BBs, selling tapes and CDs, like selling pick 3s. Rang up a million sale, you didn't hit the lottery. I'm a Benjamin chaser, player hater eraser. Police have no case, cause I do murders without a trace. I'm almost at home, I didn't pass third base. I'm playing with 5 figures, but when I get 6, I'm straight. If I catch your bitch down bad, I'm a hitter. Paper chasing nigga, BG, a money go get about my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody try to stop you, kill 'em. I'm about my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody try to stop you, kill 'em. I'm about my betty nigga, I'm about my betty, by all means necessary. I'm about my betty nigga, I'm about my betty, by all means necessary. All about the Benjamin, it's all about the green, the motherfucking loot. BG. I get mine on. I get my grind on. I get my shine on. You get yours on. I'm trying to get mine. You trying to get yours? I'm stacking mine. You stacking yours?
I'm stacking mine. Are you stacking your? We go hard in the yard with a library card. 7-gang sauce gang over everything. Y'all know we rocking, man. We back, y'all. Did you miss me? We back, put that work in, bro. We're going to deal with the ancient Near Eastern influence on Sub-Saharan Africa. It's an article that was done, I think, around 2009 by a professor at South African University. So, yeah, we're going to get it in, man. Hey, before we get it in, I just want to read something from Max Planck. Scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents. So none of my videos, none of my content, and eventually the book that I'm going to, bring out is not to convince nobody, no opponent, no nothing. I'm not trying to evangelize people. It's not about convincing, you know what I'm saying? I provide the evidence, and whoever finds value in it, you find value in it. I am willing to debate anybody on any point that they have of contention. We can debate it. So a scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die. Like all the ops gonna die eventually, you know what I'm saying? And a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. So we're not here to convince nobody. We're just planting seeds here. All right. Yeah, we're gonna get it in, man. Shalom to everybody. Shalom, Curtis Lee. Yap in the building. You know how we rock it, man. We Japanese in the building. You feel me? Shalom to my brother Rule, True Hebrew, Rule in the building. Yap gang, Source gang, tanks in the ground, all that, man. Source up, shut up. Shalom to my brother Ezekiel. Shalom to Royal Prince. Y'all know how we rocking, bro. We back at it. We back at it. We steady working. You understand? We always stay ahead of the ops, man. You know the answer. You know how we stay ahead of the ops. We read. We actually read. We continue to read, grow. We do this on a consistent basis. These dudes be taking time off. These dudes don't really be dealing with the literary works. They don't be dealing with the literature. They don't deal with the scientific, method. They don't deal with anything, man. They don't deal with the articles. They deal with, rhetoric. Death to the rhetoric. 7 gang, man. 7 candlesticks up. We've been telling y'all it ain't a debate. It's a stick up. So before we get into what we're going to be reading today, fair use. We are covered on Section 107 of the Copyright Act, which provides a statutory framework for determining whether something is a fair use and identifying certain types of uses, such as criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. So we're going to be doing a little bit of all of that, giving commentary, critiques here and there, teaching, and scholarship and research purposes for the article that we're about to dive into. And again, disclaimer, I'm not trying to convince anybody. A lot of y'all build your channels based off your religiosity and how you want to try to convince people. And, oh, no, brother, you got to think like me. First of all, I don't have that high mind mentality. I don't care if you don't think like me. I just move on and deal with those that are one accord. I don't have time to be something worried about the few individuals or the people or a group or a swath of people that don't disagree with me when there's people that actually find value in what I'm saying, that I could be focusing on them and building them up and teaching them and spending my time on them. This is why I don't argue with a lot of you keyboard warriors on Facebook and social media. You've already made yourself clear. You don't find value. You think it's fake. You think it's whatever. I'm not going to spend time trying to go back and forth with you until infinity and beyond. You understand? I'm not going to do that. That's just a waste of time. And again, Max Planck said it best. A scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. So, let's get right to it. Shari in the building. Yap. We Japanese in the building. You know what I'm saying? Japanese. So we're going to get right into it, man. We actually deal with scientific literature here. We actually deal with articles. We actually read the material and allow you guys to see where we're getting this information from. No secret scholarship here. We not doing the Teo, bro. Teo be tricking y'all. Teo be like, yeah, we got a doctor. His name Katz. His name is Katz. We got Dr. Katz, and he studied the pew. Like, we don't make up professors and that like that, bro. We give y'all that real deal. Straight dope, no bullshit. Y'all know how we rock it, man. This is my brother Evie want to be a part of this. I'm going to be reading the article, so I'm not going to let everybody up here. I'll put the link in the chat. All right, so yeah, we give y'all that real deal Holyfield here on the channel. Straight dope, no bullshit. Blue magic. You know what I'm saying? And for all the Afrocentrics watching, I must say this before, give y'all a my brother Avery in the building, the savant from the Levant. What's going on, brother?
Shalom, shalom. I'm not gonna be here long. I was actually just gonna pop in and pop out, but I just wanted to just tell the fam that Jacob Israel did not like our video. He is still messaging me to today, like 4+ times. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting. Still spewing a bunch of pseudo nonsense, still lying. But I just wanted to let y'all know that the ops don't stop. It's crazy.
Yeah, we could just let that hamster roll on that wheel by itself.
Yeah, I haven't messaged him back since. I just laugh at him because he's just being too pseudo at this point.
Exactly. That's fan mail. You know what I'm saying? We don't really read too much fan mail. The ops fans of us. We don't
Facts.
read that. So we let the insane. Like, here's the thing, bro. Eagles don't fly with pigeons, bro. You niggas is pigeons, and we don't fly with y'all. We at a whole different altitude. You know what I'm saying? Y'all eat city trash and stuff like that. We actually go out and hunt. So it's a big difference. Y'all scavenge
Yeah,
and hunt.
true anti-Semite right there.
Yeah, he's a racist, bigot, anti-Semite, colorist, all you name it. He's all a part of that. So we're not worried about him, man. We all about, giving the information to the audience and disseminating information. That's it. But before I start, I want to give a message, 2 messages. I always require one thing of you guys before we get into any video, but I also have a message for Afrocentrics, because you have Afrocentrics that follow more of a serendipity model, and they hate hearing anything about ancient Near Eastern influence in Sub-Saharan Africa. So I have a PSA for them as well. Matter of fact, let me show that PSA, because I know a lot of Afrocentrics hate watch my video. You understand? They hate watch our videos, man. Like many of these other groups, these racist white Jews hate watch our videos. Racist black Jews hate watch our videos. But I have a message for the Afrocentrics, because, like I said, I'm the head chairman of the I Don't Give a Damn committee.
Jesus, so
brother, listen to me good, brother.
You might have to bite a bullet.
No, brother, stop.
I'm gonna go look that up right now.
No, brother, stop.
Go ahead.
I don't give a damn about all you conscious, stupid ass, ignorant Negroes. You some stupid niggas. Okay,
you better chill with that, bro.
Hold on, bro. You are the same dumb niggas that let Bobby Hemmett sell you angel checks. You are the same stupid niggas that let Bobby Hemmett, whatever that Hemmett guy name is, sell you dumb niggas money bricks. You stupid niggas was buying angel checks and money bricks, thinking that you were going to be blessed by buying angel checks and money bricks. Okay? So you little brick-laying, dumbass, conscious people.
Look, my sentiments are with BJM on that one. Look, we're not worried about Afrocentrics, man. You are the same guys that get scammed. You pay $30,000 towards young Pharaoh's fake lawyer fee. He uses it to party up and buy, luxurious items and whatnot. You buy money bricks and angel checks from Bobby Hemmett. Like, you guys have a long history of being duped. I don't have to, I don't really care about y'all, like what your opinion is. Right, sweetie. I know, you know what I'm saying? That's one of my nicknames, man. I'm the source terrorist. I'm the source terrorist, brother. You say, unbeknownst to you, you are spreading terror among people that have been peddling falsehoods all around and making money on the side. Yeah, that's why they don't like us, man. They're afraid their money gonna stop, brother. If people start watching us and start, getting hip to what we're saying. I also have one more thing, man, that I require of my audience. And then we're going to get into the main course here. We're going to get into the meat and potatoes of today's episode. One thing. I don't require money. I don't require a membership. I just require one thing from my audience.
Hi, everybody. Time to use your noggin. How do you use your noggin, you say? Well, here's how you use it every day. Use your noggin when you write a letter. Use your noggin when you make it better. Use your noggin when you play guitar. Use your noggin to spot a star. Use your noggin when you make a scene. Use your noggin when you mix up green. Use your noggin to play a game. When you use your noggin, it's never the same. Use your noggin to sing a song. Ask another noggin to sing along. Use Use your noggin with your computer. Hey, that's Z. What could be cuter? Use your noggin. That's what it's for.
I'm using my noggin.
Are you using yours?
I'm using my noggin. Are you using yours? So the only thing I'm requiring of my audience is to use your noggin. Use your brain power. Tap into that mental prowess. Activate that mental power, bro. That's what I need y'all to do. Right? On all my episodes when we're dealing with topics, I need you guys to tap in. Oh, yeah. Can't wait, James. Just let me know when you're ready to air that. James has got a powerful presentation that he's about to present. Coming soon.
What is it about?
Yeah, hit him on Telegram. He'll tell you.
Oh, okay.
I forgot the name of the topic, bro. I forgot, but he'll tell you. But he got some information. He sent me an article. Well, he put it in a resource group, and I was wondering where he was going to go with it. Yeah. All right, so we're going to read this article, man. Razib Khan can come on. He said, James said he can't let the cat out the bag yet. But I know he did share an article, and I was wondering what angle was he taking with that article a few weeks back. But yeah, let's get into this article, man. So this is written around 2008. Ancient Near Eastern Influence in Sub-Saharan Africa by Magdal Leroux from the University of South Africa. It says abstract, recent research shows that the cultural remnants of a more distant past were more faithfully preserved in Sub-Saharan Africa than in societies further north. Striking parallels between extant African cultures in written as well as oral testimonies concerning ancient Near Eastern societies can be detected. So, just reading this pretty much reinforces what we've been discovering on the DNA side of things. DNA has showed us that, hey, there is admixture signals from Eurasia in various African populations like the Tobu. We even see it in Central Africa, right? And we have articles saying all African tribes have some level of Eurasian admixture, showing that backflow into Africa was the case, and it happened in multiple waves. It wasn't a one and done thing. So when we're reading stuff like in Zephaniah 3 and 10, the daughter of my dispersed will be beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is northern Sudan. That we will start seeing Jews or Israelites or people with these Eurasian mixtures at the minimum penetrating into Sub-Saharan Africa. And we are seeing this on the genetic side of things. We are seeing the signal coming from Eurasia through Egypt, through Sudan, and into Central Africa. We have seen this. We have covered this on prior episodes. This is what we're seeing. And this paper was written before a lot of the innovations and reveals of modern genetics came to the forefront. So it's just beautiful how everything's culminating together to paint this picture. So again, it says striking parallels between extant African cultures in written as well as oral testimonies concerning ancient Near Eastern societies can be detected. First of all, let me look at a map real quick. Let me get Africa. Then we'll go right back to this, right? Get a map of Africa. So I'm going to pull up Africa. Let's see if I can blow it up real big so you guys can see what we're talking about here. I'm using the wiki, so it's taking this sweet time to load. But I want to go here. I want to show you where Kush is, where Sudan is. So when you read stuff like Zephaniah 3 and 10, you know what you're talking about. Zephaniah 3 and 10 is in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? So if it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls, this is a tradition that was held even by the early Judeans, that there were Jews that went into Africa. A lot of people try to dismiss that, but this is Africa, right? This is Egypt. This is Sudan. This is Central Africa here. I believe this is Chad and Niger, right? So genetic studies have shown that the area above here, the Levantine corridor, there's a signal coming from the Levantine corridor going down.
Hello, you there?
Yes, you can't hear me? Yeah, I can tell that. I can be heard, brother. You must be losing your signal, Ivory. so I can see the sound waves coming from my mic. But if you look at the Levantine corridor coming down into Egypt, then down into Northern Sudan, this would be Kush. Northern Sudan would be Kush. So if you go beyond the rivers of Ethiopia or Kush, you're going into Central Africa. That's where you're going. You're going to Central Africa, Chad, Niger. Now, the intriguing thing about that is, let me see if I can find a paper real quick. They found a genetic signal from Eurasia, a history of gene flow from Eurasia into Chad, into Niger, to Central Africa, pretty much. Let me see if I can get the right one. And just pull up the map for you guys can visualize it, visual aid, so you brothers can see from a genetic standpoint. Because again, like what's being pointed out, I believe it's the 2016 paper. Yeah, it is. Article. The article that I'm about to pull up is, I think, Chad genetic diversity reveals an African history marked by multiple Holocene European migrations. And they even in this paper, it talks about how, this is it, the Tobo, the Lao, the Sahara, and Central Africa. Even in this paper, it talks about how the Chadic language is not even attributed to the R markers, it's actually to the E markers. And they say it could have been around 3,700 years ago when the actual people that spoke the Proto-Chadic or the Afro-Asiatic language made their way to Central Africa. Very interesting read. We brought it out in the show before. I want to bring up this map. If I can't find it, I can't find it. I might have it in the resource group. But it talks about the Chadite, the signal that you find in Chad. Let me see. Yeah, this is it right here. Let me just share this. Let me share this. I might not can find the map, but you guys will see here in a minute. Boom. So this is the paper here on Science Direct. Chad genetic diversity reveals an African history marked by multiple Holocene Eurasian migrations. Mark Heber and all. What year was this? I believe 2016. Because understanding human genetic diversity in Africa is important for interpreting the evolution of all humans, yet vast regions of Africa, such as Chad, remain genetically poorly investigated. Here we use genotype data from 480 samples from Chad, the Near East, and Southern Europe, as well as whole genome sequencing from 19 of them, to show that many populations today derive their genomes from ancient African Eurasian admixtures. We found the evidence of an early Eurasian backflow to Africa and people speaking the unclassified isolate Lao language in southern Chad, and estimate from a linguist disequilibrium decay that this occurred 4,750 to 7,200 years ago. It brought to Africa a Y chromosome lineage, R1b-VA8. So this is the estimation from when R1b came, right? Whose closest relatives are widespread in present-day Eurasia. We estimate from sequence data that the Chad R1b-VA8 Y chromosome correlates 5,700 to 7,300 years ago. This migration could thus have originated among Near Eastern farmers during the African humid period. We also found that the previously documented Eurasian backflow in Africa, which occurred less than 3,000 years ago, was thought to be mostly limited to Africa. East Africa had a more widespread impact, affecting populations in northern Chad, such as Tobo, who have 20 to 30% Eurasian ancestors today. We observed a decline in heterozygosity in admixed Africans found that Eurasian admixture can bias inferences on their correlation history and confound genetic signals from adaptation or archaic integration. So within this paper, it talks about the Eurasian signals, the Eurasian gene flow, not just being limited to East Africa. A lot of people think that, but as we can see, we even find the signals picked up in Central Africa as well. And I believe that's why we're finding what we're talking about in today's paper. Let me see if I can just find this map real quick. So there's a map there, but there's an actual map that shows the migration. If not, we'll just move on. Here it is, found it. So This is the map here. Let me see if I can download full-size image. You guys see that? Maybe you can't. Let me copy, boom, paste. This is the image here. Let me blow this up, see if I can blow this up even more. As you guys can see, there's a Eurasian signal coming in, the blue arrow coming in from Eurasia, going through the Levantine corridor, going down Egypt, going into Chad. As you can see, Central Africa. Next country over is Niger, right? Then there's another signal that's going towards Ethiopia, right? So there's two signals. Migrations from both sides less than 3,000 years ago. My question is, what's making these people from Eurasia leave less than 3,000 years ago and starting to proliferate into Africa and disseminate and disperse into Africa? What's making them do this? Less than 3,000 years ago, a historical event that we know was going on during this time is the Assyrian occupation, where they were taking over large areas of the Middle East and depopulating some areas, some localities, taking people out, taking people captives. So I can see an event like that causing people to flee. And as we can see, the signal is showing them fleeing into Africa. Because what else can make sense? Why do we see this migration during this time, less than 3,000 years ago? Again, that's the blue arrow. Now, when you have the R1BV88, the R markers, how they got into Africa, that's much earlier, less than 6,000 years ago, and that's the gold arrow. As you can see, going to southern Chad, going into Central Africa. So these are two separate migratory events. One event happened less than 3,000 years ago, which I think is around the time of the Assyrians. And the gold arrow is an earlier migration that deals with the R1BV88 peoples, like the Chadic people, right? All right, so from there, let's go back to the article. So just wanted to bring that out, put some extra sauce on what we're reading here. There is a genetic component and genetic side of this argument. So again, it says here, striking parallels between extant African cultures and written as well as oral testimonies concerning ancient Near Eastern societies can be detected. And looking at the genetic side of things, we can see why it can be detected. Because again, we see a Eurasian signal, less than 3,000 years old, coming in from Eurasia, coming in through the Levant corridor, going through Egypt, through Sudan, and making its way into Central Africa. All right. Let's continue reading. It says here, it becomes clear that in the period preceding the textual evidence of the Middle Ages, African societies were not isolated or self-contained. And that's a big point because a lot of people believe that they were isolated. I mean, we even read scientific paper that says, hey, some people were restricted because of the farming of the Sahara Desert. Because before it had a wet phase, and then it became a desert, right? Because it's in cycles. It goes to a wet phase, and the desert phase, wet phase, desert phase. So some people believe that, hey, they were isolated because of the Sahara Desert. People were trapped underneath the Sahara, right, as it formed. It says, but that instead, they took part on various levels of global exchange. And this would make sense. Again, we see the genetic signal with the Bantus having a Levant-like ancestry. We see that signal that's tied to the Bantu agricultural expansion, as we read before, Lusrec 2018 et al. So where you can find that information in the supplementary material. It says historians are inclined to attach considerable importance to written sources, while they tend to disregard the stories that are orally transmitted. Lange and others disregard the present trend of research, i.e. an African perspective of an African past, and adopt a comparative perspective which leads to the conclusion that the oral traditions which trace the origin of some African states or cultures to the ancient Near East are basically correct. Okay, so that's the abstract. Introduction. Our first publication dealt with the religion and politics of ancient Israel. Field research among the Limba in Southern Africa spurred my interest in oral traditions, archaeology, and social and political institutions in Africa. In this paper, I turned my attention to the study of cultural remnants of the distant past, which have been more faithfully preserved in Sub-Saharan Africa than in the societies further north. In this regard, I'm relying on the recent work done by Lange in 2004 and others. Now, I want to say something about the Limba because, again, anyone that believes, because what she stated here prior to this, right, that Africans were not isolated or self-contained is huge because the Limba show that. The Limba actually show this. How does the Limba show that they were not isolated? Because we know that there's a gene flow that existed. That meaning a gene flow is that people migrated with the genetic material from Eurasia into Sub-Saharan Africa. How do we know this? Because the Limba, they comprise of K haplogroup, L haplogroup, J haplogroup. These are Eurasian haplogroups. How did they make their way into Africa? These Eurasian people traveled into Africa. And this is what establishes the gene flow. Now, just looking at Limba and going off a phenotype, you won't know this. But the advances of DNA technology and DNA testing has allowed us to see and tap into history and tap into the early migrations that happened, right? So we know migrations took place from Eurasia into Africa because you have people like the Limba, Sub-Saharan Africa, that have different haplogroups that belong outside of Africa. All right, so it says here, continue reading. The investigation disregards the present trend of research, i.e., an African perspective of the African past, and adopts a comparative perspective. It is with a view of interpreting the strange and exotic, especially when we deal with oral traditions from different cultures and different epochs of the past, that scholars in the field of comparative religion have developed a strategy of description, comparison with phenomena that are widely divergent and different as possible. Revisiting our initial description in the light of our comparative work and the theoretical models applied, and rectification of categories, a reconceptualization of the phenomena, but not in terms derived from the insider language. Once comparative models are introduced, we start to discover the complexity and the rhetoricity of the myth-making processes. On the basis of new evidence gained through field research, it can be shown how striking parallels between extant, meaning surviving African cultures, and written testimonies concerning ancient Near Eastern societies can be detected. Africa north of the Sahara was part of the Mediterranean world and also in close contact with major developments in Near Asia. It becomes clear that in the period preceding the textual evidence of the Middle Ages, African societies were not isolated or self-contained, but instead took part on various levels in global exchange. They were in intense economic and cultural contact with Semitic societies of the ancient Near East. Lange mentions in particular that during the Canaanite Phoenician period, many culture traits of ancient Mediterranean and Near Eastern societies were adopted in African context, almost unchanged, but others were modified due to local factors, thus giving rise to new cultures with specific forms of their own. And this is not unique to Africa. This is not unique to African peoples. Yes, Lange is Professor Derek Lange. Yes, that's who she's referring to. But this phenomenon is not, unique to Africa. This also happened in Europe. You see a lot of cultures, being meshed with Jews or Eurasian people as they go east of Europe. They're meshing and absorbing customs from the local people. Their language is making a language shift, right? They're no longer speaking the languages they speak in Palestine. They're starting to speak Slavic. They're starting to speak Yiddish. They're picking up the language of the locals. They're picking up the culture of the locals. So the same thing would happen. The same thing would be true as Eurasian groups migrating to Africa. It says, his reconstruction of the Canaanite Israelite culture areas of Africa south of the Sahara is based on oral and cultic traditions. He argues that historians are inclined to attach considerable importance to written sources, while they tend to discard the stories that are orally transmitted. Oral cultures simply rely much less, mostly not at all, on reading and writing than do modern cultures. To get a more accurate picture of Sub-Saharan Africa's distant past and its trading partners, an interdisciplinary study is necessary over a very broad spectrum based on a proper synthesis of all existing data. By restricting himself to the study of parallel phenomena in Hausa and other sub-Saharan communities in Canaanite societies, Lange does not provide any historical explanation for the spread of Semitic influences to the societies further south of the Sahara. He does, however, refer to the Phoenician factor in the state-building processes in sub-Saharan Africa. My focus will mainly be on some A&E remnants in Hausa land, which A&E is ancient Near Eastern, Yoruba, Kenya, Ethiopia, and among the limits sub-Saharan Africa. And I will also indicate ostensible evidence of maritime undertakings and activities between the ancient Near East and Africa south of the Sahara. Ancient trade with Africa has been greatly neglected, and where writers have referred to it, it mostly concerned the Horn of Africa and northeast coast. Due to scarcity of information, both written and archaeological, one has to rely on classical authors, and when they are silent, as they most often are, one has to build up plausible theories around what little information is available. Informed speculation often leads to remarkable findings. Remnants of South Near Eastern influence in African states and cultures south of Sahara. Hausa land, Yoruba, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Hausa land lies in the Sudanese belt just south of the Sahara. Lange compares the cult mythological system underpinning the Hausa states with that of various other states of the central Sudan and of the ancient Near East, and purposes precise ways and periods for the spread of the Canaanite Israelite cultural pattern to the West and East Africa. Before I continue, let me make sure I'm live. Okay, I'm still live, still kicking. It says here, methodologically, the attempt to relate mythical incidents to ritual performances come close to the approach adopted by scholars of the well-known myth and ritual school in the field of ancient Near Eastern studies. Looking at the question of origins without preconceptions, he finds that a rather coherent body of legend, myth, ritual, and linguistic elements supports the idea that the earliest barriers of the Hausa culture, insofar as they are presently identifiable, were Hebrews. The core element of Hausa story, the Bayajida legend, is provided by the Israelite tradition of Canaan, or more precisely, the biblical tale of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar. On the basis of recent research, it can now be advanced that the pre-Islamic Ghani festival in Dara was originally a New Year's festival during which the people commemorated the killing of the snake. The deeper meaning of the ritual became clear through the model of interpretation provided by the myths of Ugarit, which was discovered in Ras Shamra in the 13th century BC. These discoveries shed new light on the Canaanite religion and culture, which otherwise were known only from the Bible, from information recorded by some Greek authors. In light of these findings, Bayajida has several traits of Baal, who's vanquished the sea god Yam. The axe in the Hausa legend was the principal symbol of Baal and the weapon used by the heroic god to overcome Yam in a struggle for the cosmic kingship. The serpent of Dara was cut into 7 pieces. This indication is paralleled by information provided by the Ugarit myth, in which the sea god Yam is equated with the wriggling serpent, the tyrant with 7 heads. That's interesting. So you have a Canaanite belief that possibly can line up with an early Hausa legend. Says other recorded versions of the Hausa legend could be compared with the Canaanite notion of 7-headed dragon Leviathan and the splitting of the body of Tiamat, which according to the Babylonian creation myth gave rise to the universe. Certain Oriental survivals among the Hausa cannot be traced back to Canaan. We have to suppose that the forebears of the Hausa had, like the Jews in their Babylonian exile, added to their Israelite and Canaanite heritage concepts derived from Mesopotamian culture. The comparison between the Yoruba myth of Sango and the Baal cycle of Ugarit, and between the Yoruba myth of Yamoja and the Babylonian creation epic, implies the existence of cultural influences from the Semitic world to West Africa. Turning to the Kibi traditions, these equate the Kanta legend with the legend of Sargon of Akkad and suggests even more precise and historically retraceable connections to the outside world. Lange also examines precise parallels between the festival of a dying and rising god in Ifi with the fate of similar deity in the Baal cycle of Ugarit. Weiser comes to a similar conclusion concerning the Igogo festival of Owo and the myth of Ishtar. The myth of Ishtar descents into the underworld, describes how all reproduction on Earth ceased while she was away. The Baal cycle is best known example of a cult myth within the sphere of the Canaanite culture. The Yoruba Itipa festival and the related social and political institutions are thought to be related to the early state building processes set in motion by the Phoenicians in the region of Lake Chad. Merker found parallels between beliefs and customs on the Masia myths, the East African pastoral people of Kenya and northern Tanzania, and many other East African peoples in the customs of the biblical Hebrews. These myths include similarities in the names of God and circumcision in the belief in the figure of Moses, whom Merker identified with Masai, Marumi, or Musani. In a variety of legends, which include the stories of the creation world, Adam and Eve in the fall, the story of the flood, the theft of the birthright, and the bronze serpent and the 10 Commandments. Wow. It says the best known Semitic group in Africa today are probably the Jews or Black Israelites in Ethiopia, who approximately the 1920s were known as the Falasha. The word Falasha is derived from ancient Ethiopic or gaze term meaning exile or stranger. The Falasha had certain customs which provided at least circumstantial evidence of the early ties with a Judaic civilization. These customs included circumcision, the following of food prescriptions very close to those outlined in the book of Leviticus, and the practice of celebrating the Sabbath on Saturdays rather than Sundays. According to Lange, immigrants from the South Arabia imported a Semitic language into Africa. He is convinced that at one stage, perhaps during the Achaemenid period or later, Semitic colonists brought with them the Israelite legend of Queen Sheba. These oral traditions became officially only as a consequence of the Christianization of Aksum in the first half of the 4th century AD. Limba in southern Africa. The maritime activities of the Sami and Yemenite Arabs provided background to the Semitic elements found in the traditions of the Limba of southern Africa. According to the Yemenite folklore, their forebears migrated from Palestine to Yemen exactly 42 years before the destruction of the first temple. Now, what's crazy about this is the Bible actually bears record to there being Jews in Yemen, a place called Sinai. Right? The Bible actually bears reference in that twice in a book of Nehemiah and what's the other book? The book of Ezra. They actually quote that there were Jews that returned from these areas back to Palestine. It says, in the view of the maritime enterprises in the Red Sea by King Solomon and some Judean kings, it is not far-fetched to assume that some Judeans settled in Yemen and eventually in Africa during the early period. The Sabian Arabs had been very much involved in the settlement and exploitation of the coast of East Africa at the beginning of the 7th century BC and early in our era. Their very early influence in Ethiopia on language and writing characteristics, and also on the Limba, whose oral traditions indicate that they came across the sea from Yemen to Africa, can clearly be surmised. And now we can do more than just surmise because we have the genetic information from these groups. And again, these genetic profile of these people, they have a lot of haplogroups that belong to the Middle East. You know, they connect back to a lot of groups in the Middle East with L. They have J, they have JP58. They have these different haplogroups amongst them. It says here, most Limba traditions are transmitted by means of songs, sermons, prayers, praises, proverbs, recitations, symbols, rituals, stories, written documents, and numerous other media. A comparative study among the Limba illustrates and indicates diversity and unity within the same group. A group sense in the same tradition could exist in spite of geographical distance and language difference. Almost as it could be for European Jews who are universally dispersed, far away from present-day Israel, widely scattered Limba communities in southern Africa, and Yemenite Jews who hardly had contact with each other and did not even know of one another's existence reflect similarity in their concept of their ancestry. This could point to at least some authentic Jewish influence in the past before the diaspora, perhaps 600 AD. before 600 AD, which has been preserved in our oral traditions. Similar research can unfortunately no longer be conducted among the various tribes of early Israel, but there are traces of similar feeling of unity and similarity of traditions in spite of distance and other differences, which are reflected in the pages of the Old Testament. If the limbo originated from the Jews in the Yemen and before that from the ancient Israel, this Yemenite community of Jews in Africa is perhaps the only ones that remain practically unaffected by intra-Jewish migration. When Islam emerged, the Jews of Yemen were cut off from the rest of the Jewish people. It is indeed the possibility of preserving that part of very ancient religious groups which makes the limbo so valuable to the historian of religion, comparative religion, or missiology. My comparison of social and religious practices and rituals of early Israel, 1250,000 BC, with those of Limba has delivered noteworthy results. Similarities such as circumcision and the new moon ceremonies, kosher eating, and martial laws offer an indispensable tool of interpretation. Although various religions have had an influence on their viewpoints, and most Limba belong to one or other Christian denomination, it appears that we can refer to their social and religious practices and viewpoints that have a resemblance to a syncretizing, pluralistic, pre-Talmudic Judaism embedded in the African culture. A coherent body of legend, myth, archaeology, ritual, and linguistic elements supports the idea that the earliest bearers of Limba culture, insofar as they are presently identifiable, were Hebrews. All right, so let's get to part 3 is ostensible reason for ancient Near Eastern activities in Southeast Africa. Again, ostensible means apparent. The obsession with gold. It is often supposed that gold was the most attractive object of the Phoenician African trade. By the time of the early civilizations, 3000, 2000 BC, gold had not only retained its sacred quality, but had also become the symbol of wealth and social rank. It was believed that humans were given civilizations by their gods, and gold was established by the property of the gods, a divine metal as documented by conquistadors in Mesoamerica. In the Iliad and Odyssey, the epic poems of ancient Greece, Homer describes gold repeatedly both as a sign of wealth among mortals and as a symbol of splendor among the immortals. The obsession with gold is a central feature in most, if not all, ancient mythology, and yet as strange as it may seem, after studying 600 African mythological stories, some scholars cannot find one clear reference to gold. They suggest that a possible theory could be that because many Africans were slaves working in the gold mines, they would have had no real feeling for or understanding of what they're doing. Later, the obsession with gold became a human obsession inherited from the gods. It continued to play a pivotal role throughout human evolution. Our entire human history is inextricably linked to the production of gold. References to gold and gold mining are numerous in the Old Testament. 6 sources are mentioned: Havilah, Ophir, Sheba, Midian, Euphus, and Parvium. The exact locations of all 6 have given rise to much speculation. Space constraints mean that all these locations will not be discussed here. I will refer only briefly to one of these locations, namely Ophir. According to the Old Testament, it was the Phoenicians or Tyrians who traded with the land of Ophir, from where King Solomon drew rich merchandise after he had formed an alliance with Hiram, king of Tyre. Ophir could have been in southern Arabia, India, or even East Africa, so follow. With their merchants and markets, Africa is the greatest gold-producing region of the 3. There is no indication in 1 Kings 10:11 of distance between Eslon Geber, Elaph, and the Red Sea, and Ophir. And some scholars suggest not searching for Ophir beyond the Red Sea in its southern Arabian limit to Babel. Can you close that door? Thank you. Babel el-Madeb. The geographical options for the location of Ophir would then be limited to Sudan, Eritrea, or Ethiopia in East Africa or Western Arabia. The most probable view is that Ophir was situated in Arabia, an old tradition recorded by Eupolemus, circa 150 BC. Also assigns Ophir to the region, identifying it with the island of Upfree in the Red Sea. The problem is that gold had already been exploited in those regions at that stage. comes to the conclusion that if Ophir was situated in a relevant area of East Africa, it could have been an 11th and 10th century BC successor to Punt and Amu, and therefore a source of gold for possible Tyrian Hebrew expeditions. From the recent archaeological discovery at Tel Qasil of a storage jar inscribed in cursive Phoenician script, gold of Ophir, historical substance is given to the land hitherto thought to be legendary. The Egyptian sources inform us also about the legendary country named Punt. Usually it is identified with the north coast of modern Somalia, but Lindering is convinced that it's unlikely since the Egyptian report that they obtained antimony in Punt. This was not produced in the Horn of Africa, but in modern Mozambique. He comments that the Pawanit is the Swahili word indicating seaside, and that is the similar word that has existed 2,600 years ago. The earliest reference to Punt is a note from the 4th dynasty of Pharaoh Khufu. The famous expedition to Punt is the naval expedition sent there in 1482 by Queen Hatshepsut. It is vividly recorded on the walls of Hatshepsut's celebrated mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri near Thebes. Herodotus records that Ramesses I dispatched an expedition in about 1250 BC, which perhaps reached Madagascar. It seems that in the New Kingdom contact was frequent, and there is textual evidence of shrine or temple in Punt dedicated to the Egyptian goddess Hathor. Dafu argues that the ancient traders who knew how to reach the riches of southern Africa tried to keep the whereabouts a secret and ought to use the same names for quite different places. For example, both Africa and Indonesia were referred to as the land of Wak-Wak, and the word Maluha was used for both the East Coast and the Indus Valley. Dafu writes, these winds blow from northeast from May to November and then conveniently switch to the southwest from November to May. The result is that with the northeast monsoon traders could sail down the east coast of Africa, but when returning with the southwest monsoon, they made a direct crossing of the Indian Ocean to India. Consequently, 3-year return voyage, Ophir must have been a far distant place. Because of the distance, it was nevertheless impossible to voyage to and from Ophir, if it was India, without making a principal landfall at Sofala. But sailing to Ophir could apparently not be accomplished without the expert help of Tyrian sailors. It seems the search for gold stretched much further down into Africa. Of the great number of Phoenician voyages, only one report is known to us. It is a description by Herodotus of a voyage around Africa. Herodotus records that Phoenician sailors in service of the Egyptian pharaoh Necho, 672 to 664 BC, who ruled over the entire Syro-Palestinian region between 609 and 605, circumnavigated Africa in the 600 BC from east to west, from the Red Sea to the southeastern coast of Africa. It is described that they had the sun at noontide upon their starboard. That is, they rounded the Cape of Good Hope and sailed back northward by the Atlantic and Mediterranean until they reached Egypt again. It took them 3 years, and each year they landed somewhere long enough to sow a crop or wheat and harvest it. This is possible indication that the land of Ophir was actually in this part of the world. This story told by Herodotus was generally questioned after the famous geographer Ptolemy had said that it was impossible to circumnavigate Africa. When Bartimaeus Dias reached the Cape of Good Hope in 1488, he proved that Ptolemy's statement that one could not circumnavigate Africa was simply wrong. The Phoenicians were notoriously and understandably reticent about the trade routes upon which their commercial and physical survival depended. So there is no known supporting evidence from that source. It is assumed that the Phoenicians kept secret their sailing directions and such as well guarded their trade route, which is the reason why we do not know much of their voyages. Anti-archaeological evidence of such exploration to southern Africa is found in the existence of a number of rock paintings in Phoenician and other beads. Over the years, various ancient Egyptian artifacts surfaced in various finds in sub-Saharan Africa to confirm that there must have been trade with the far south of the continent. Dafu mentions the archaeologists have found ancient Phoenician and Egyptian pottery and glass at numerous sub-Saharan sites. Glass beads of Egyptian and Phoenician origin have been discovered at Great Zimbabwe, Mpungwe, and related sites in southern Africa. Professor Dart discovered 28 coins at a depth of about 6 feet on the site of the native hut near the beach of Fort Governor in eastern Pondoland. The British Museum dated the oldest coins to the period of Ptolemy I, and the others were Roman coins issued between the dates 296 and 313, 5 of them being struck at Alexandria. In May 1901, Dr. Charles Peters reported the find of an ancient Egyptian Ushabti figurine in the vicinity of Tit. And in 1905, Sir Charles Elliott reported the discovery of an Egyptian idol at Mogadishu. Its present whereabouts is unknown. An engraving in southern Africa with remarkable similarity to simple Phoenician ships was found on the Draco Island near Kimberley. Archaeology confirms that not everything that happened or exactly how it happened was written down. There's an indication of an old South African map of the Cape Peninsula showing the wreck of a Phoenician galley located in the middle of the Cape Flats, about 10 kilometers from Cape Town, referring to what seemed to be the timbers of a vessel deeply embedded in the sea. Thomas in 1827 reported, whatever may be in this, Captain Owen seems to have obtained strong evidence of the commerce of Phoenicians having extended from the Red Sea much farther down the eastern coast of Africa than is generally imagined, and to have pretty clearly ascertained that the celebrated gold mines of ancient Ophir were situated in the vicinity of Inhamban, where it is remarkable that a place of the name Ophir, still rich in gold and ivory, exists to the present day. It seems, therefore, not altogether incredible that the Phoenician mariners may have actually doubled the Cape of Good Hope from the Indian Ocean. The remains of the ancient ship found in the 1890s during the laying out of the Maitland Cemetery on the Woltmade Flats near Cape Town were similarly identified as belonging to one of the Phoenician ships, which probably stranded there. A number of ancient logs were found on the wreck of an ancient ship, 1000 BC, which sank near Uluburun on the coast of modern Turkey. The Center for Wood Anatomy Research of U.S. Forest Products Laboratory in Madison, Wisconsin, tested the logs in 1985, and they were found to be Dalbergia melanoxylon or African blackwood, which grows as far south as Mozambique. Registrar indicated that this is the same wood used in the furniture in Tutankhamun's tomb, and most probably that mentioned in the Punt inscriptions. The people and animals represented in the relief of Hatshepsut are unmistakably from southern Africa. However, there is plenty of evidence of ancient gold mining in the area stretching from the former northern Transvaal to the Sambesi. Summers has gone on record with the figure of between 4,000 and 5,000 pre-European gold workings in Rhodesia. And Mason has mentioned several in the former Transvaal, including one as far as the district of Middelburg, east of Pretoria, South Africa. According to Woodhouse, none of these have yet been ascribed to the latter Stone Age, but very little archaeological work has been done on them. According to the archaeologists, it is not certain whether people were already mining gold for export prior to the arrival of stronger groups who enslaved them, or whether the mining commenced only after the contact with Iron Age people about 2,000 years ago. According to Summers, the mining and treatment methods used in Zimbabwe were almost exactly the same as those recorded from Ptolemaic Egypt. Unfortunately, many of the traces of early mining in Zimbabwean plateau have been destroyed by modern mining activity. Van Dyke refers to the bird decorations, usually a hawk on the prow and the stern of the early Phoenician ships. Bitt noticed striking similarities and makes interesting comparisons between the Zimbabwean bird stelae and the role of the similar birds in especially Egypt. Near the Temple of Great Zimbabwe is a furnace of refining gold built with a very hard cement of pulverized granite with a chimney of the same material. Boscawen noticed that the hawk and emblems of the goddess Hathor nearly always occurs as guardian emblems in mines and quarries of the ancient Egyptians in Africa and the Sinai. and in Sinai, Proto-Sinaitic texts. Hathor was the miner's patron goddess, and her temple statues or inscriptions were found in many rediscovered mining locations. A small Egyptian temple erected by Seti II, dedicated to Hathor, was excavated on the center of Timna Valley, known as King Solomon's Pillars. It served the members of the Egyptian mining expedition and also their local co-workers. Boscawen argues that the association of the mines, especially with Hathor, explains the birds as, according to Sinaitic inscriptions, she was particularly worshipped in this region. Ben argues that this association with Sinai, Egypt, and also Arabia and Punt seems to be most important in connection with the emblem of the hawk found in the mines at Great Zimbabwe. According to the Egyptian tradition, she was also called the queen and ruler of Punt. Hawks, falcons are seen as godly royal symbols elsewhere in Africa. Lucas and Merowitz trace this in Nigeria and Ghana respectively. Siegelman sees the worship in Africa as Phoenician spread. The oldest signs of ore gold mining are to be found at the so-called cradle of humankind, just north of Johannesburg, South Africa. While archaeologists were uncovering amazing discoveries concerning the origins of humanity, I also stumbled upon layers of prehistoric mining activity, which was dated back to 7,690 BC by scholars from Yale and Groningen universities. Many mining pits on the northern side of the cradle of humankind scattered throughout the area attest to mineral potential that early explorers recognized there. Boucher and Beaumont have chosen Sub-Saharan Africa as the cradle of both humanity and culture. It was possible the hope of gold which brought ancient traders to the southeastern coast of Africa. Part 3. Let me get a drink of water. Lange and others indicates that in Central Sudan, for example, gold and copper was rare. Oh, this is slave trading, 3.2. It says, and is convinced that it could not possibly have provided the basis for an ongoing flow of goods through the Sahara. On the Mediterranean, the Phoenicians traded impressions of ordinary metals, timber, luxury, and other refined goods, textiles, and weapons. But it is less well known that the Phoenicians also traded extensively in human beings. Homer and Herodotus considered the Phoenicians dangerous pirates and kidnappers. The Old Testament described them as slave traders eager to acquire war captives in order to sell them to distant lands. As traders and middlemen, they take a cut on a much greater cornucopia of precious goods. As the prophet Ezekiel grudgingly admits, they were despised as cheaters and hucksters who could not be trusted, as insatiable mongers and unscrupulous profiteers who kidnapped the helpless and traded in human lives, and as licentious and moral corrupt race of people who prostituted their daughters and butchered their infant children in honor of their gods. Beauville mentions gold and slaves on equal terms. According to him, the Phoenicians were particularly well acquainted with different methods of enslavement. Black slaves, rather than gold, are therefore more likely to have constituted the bulk of the trans-Saharan trade since earliest times. Aside from their general Semitic roots, their origin and ethnic identity remain a mystery. Unlike their Syrian and Palestine neighbors, Marco suggests that the Phoenicians were a confederation of traders rather than a country defined by territorial boundaries. What did the Phoenicians call themselves? Marco suggests that the ancient term Canaanite represents the most likely possibility, even though the term Canaanite Israelite has been suggested. Nevertheless, it is suggested that the Israelites most probably participated in Phoenician colonization of North and East Africa, and the Assyrians and Canaanites, as we know them from biblical narratives, may have established themselves in North and East trading towns of Phoenicians. The Phoenicians' mother towns on the Levantine coast and further south paid tribute to Assyria from the middle of the 9th century BC. From the first half of the 8th century BC, they were subjected to direct Assyrian administration, lasting until the end of the 7th century. During the latter period, the Phoenicians, as also the Israelites, were certainly subjected to considerable cultural influence exerted on them by their Assyrian overlords. The oldest oral traditions and written sources available, the Assyrian inscription 700 BC and the Perpolis, refer to the pre-Islamic Arabian, Sabian, or Yemenite, Phoenician, and Hebrew activities in the Southeast Africa. At a very early stage, continuing influences between the Semitic world and that of the southeastern parts of Africa had a reciprocal impact on one another. As mentioned above, the Phoenician mariners were well known for their long seafaring journeys. Different biblical texts make mention of the voyages. Josephus against Apion 117 and 18. It says the knowledge of the monsoon winds was harnessed by the ancient mariners to reach East Africa and trade in those African destinations. There was of course also an overland route to the south along the Nile, and consequently Ethiopia could have had an interest in the merchandise from Rhodesia and other gold-rich countries in the south. According to the Purplists, the Sabian colonies were established very early at the beginning of the 7th century BC in Ethiopia, as is proved by the characteristics of the Ethiopian language and writing, as well by the oral traditions of the Limba in southern Africa. Semitic migrations to Africa. All right. Various pieces of information indicating very early immigrants to Africa from the Semitic world do exist. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fenced cities of Judah and took them down. According to the Jewish authors, some Hebrews and Israelites tried to escape their wrath by fleeing into Africa. Speaking of Jews, Lichtblau says, pressed under sweeping regional conflicts, Jews settled as traders and warriors in Yemen, the Horn of Africa, Egypt, the Kingdom of Cush, and Nubia, North African Punic settlements, and areas now covered by Mauritania. More immigrants followed these early Jewish settlers to Africa following the Assyrian conquest of the Israelites in the 8th century BCE. Rabbi Datanasi has placed the Hebrew Israelites all over the African continent. And this part right here is important because, again, what did we bring out earlier? We brought out the genetic signals that we can see coming from Eurasia. That's less than 3,000 years ago. I believe it matches with this period, all right? 8th century BC, we see the Assyrians come in and add conflict to the Middle East, begin to take over the Middle East, take over the Levant, terrorize Israel, threaten Judah, and now, as a result, we see people fleeing into Africa. And that will match that genetic signal that we're seeing coming from Eurasia into Africa, making its way into Central Africa and making its way down East Africa. It says the Assyrians were not the only kings to have come up against Israel. 200 years later, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, conquered Jerusalem and destroyed the first temple. Again, the Israelites tried to escape persecution and ran into the continent of Africa, even after they were instructed by Jeremiah not to. The rebels even appealed to the Queen of Heaven by burning incense to call upon her favors and structure in the struggle against Babylon. The compatriots of Jeremiah were carried away to Egypt. He joined them under protest. The prophet warned them that he was going to push King Nebuchadnezzar into Egypt and capture both Egypt and them. This warning could have caused many Israelites to migrate even deeper into Africa. According to Grazel, some Jewish mercenaries were employed by Babylonians to guard southern Egyptian border around 600 BC. They needed soldiers to protect the southern frontier of Egypt against the attacks of the Ethiopians. He added that they gave them land in a district called Aswan and granted them permission to build a temple and offer sacrifices to their gods. Around 176 BC, King Antiochus ruled the Greek kingdom and came up against Israel. Approximately 2 years later, the king attacked Jerusalem and destroyed the city and burnt it down. He also ordered them to give up their practices or they would be put to death. Again, many Hebrews fled into the Arabian Peninsula and into Africa. After the Greeks and Romans destroyed Jerusalem around 70 CE, the restrictions facing Hebrews forced them to immigrate in even greater numbers than before. Rome's vengeance forced the Hebrews who lived in Cyrenaica, approximately 100,000, and Amelia-Egypt to flee into the west and south of Africa. Lichtblau agrees that the Jewish presence in Africa began to expand significantly in the 2nd and 3rd centuries of the Christian era, extending not only into the Saharan desert, but also reaching down along West African coast, and possibly also to some Bantu tribes of southern Africa, where, according to him, some 40,000 members of the Limba clan still claim Jewish roots. Grazel says, such is the explanation of how the Sahara Desert and further south first acquired Jewish tribes and why we find so many remnants of ancient Near East in Africa south of the Sahara. Conclusion. Remnants of ancient Near Eastern influence can be detected all over Africa. Oral traditions as well as written sources indicate that there was constant contact between the ancient Near East and Africa. Archaeology and oral traditions are providing raw material for the prehistorian, the reconstruction of life prior to written sources or when written records were few or not understood. The prestige of written records has until now distracted the attention of researchers from a thorough investigation of a genuine oral tradition and other available sources. For Africanists used for Africanists used to considering African cultures in isolation, any consideration involving the ancient Near East, Mesopotamia, Canaanite, Israelite, Phoenician, Sabian must appear far-fetched. During the colonial period, it was generally supposed that in Africa, tangible progress was achieved only by foreigners. Reacting against these colonists' assumptions, the historians of independent Africa denied that there was any foreign impact on Africa prior to Islam and European expansion. This reaction has not only channeled the energies of research towards a vigorously African perspective of an African past, but has also erected a formidable barrier between Africa and the outside world, which is very very telling, because this barrier is what we deal with online when we're arguing, when we're going against these different groups. It's really because they have formed this barrier and they've pretty much created Sub-Saharan Africa into a prison for our people and our ancestors. They have made Sub-Saharan Africa and below the Sahara a prison, and the Sahara are the mental bars that keep our people there. So when we say, hey, we actually migrated from another place, or we have a history of migrating outside of Africa or within Africa, people have issues with it because of this. Because of what we're reading right now. It says, but has also erected a formidable barrier between Africa and the outside world. And we're able to crack that barrier with the field of genetics, because we're showing that our genes and our ancestors actually existed outside of Africa, and we have signals that come from the Levant. We have ancient DNA found in Iran. We have our ancestors found in Turkmenistan, which is in Central Asia. We have them found in France. We have them found in Corsica, which is an island outside of Italy. Our people are traveling all over. So you can't just trap us in when we study genetics and we understand where our ancestors were. Let's keep reading. It says, Lange and other scholars disregard the present trend of research and adopt a comparative perspective, which leads to the conclusion that the oral traditions which trace the origin of, for example, the Hausa states to the ancient Near East are basically correct. The multidisciplinary research among the Limba also shows that there's at least a very strong indication of an earlier correlation between the culture of the Limba and that of early Israel. In the period preceding the textual evidence in the Middle Ages, societies in Sub-Saharan Africa were not isolated. That's huge. Societies in Sub-Saharan Africa were not isolated or self-contained, but instead took part on various levels in global exchange. They were in intense economic and cultural contact with the Semitic societies of the ancient Near East. It is perhaps inevitable that the elaboration of alternatives to the exclusive Africa-centered approach of Africanist research begins in the mode of trial and error. Moreover, the well-disposed reader can find in them a number of important directions for further research. So again, that's the end of the paper. And for quoting purposes, let me go back to the top so you guys can see what this paper is titled and labeled. Ancient Near Eastern Influence in Sub-Saharan Africa by Madel Leroux, University of South Africa. So there were several elements that she touched on, and my knowledge of genetics, I started to mesh those two worlds. The historical and oral testimony showing that these people went back to the ancient Near Eastern peoples or had contact with ancient Near Eastern peoples. We even see that with the genetics, because we see our ancestors starting off in the Levant, or we see a component of our ancestors starting off in the Levant and migrating into Central Africa. Then with the Bantu expansion starts where? In Central Africa, and then spreads south. So we put those things together. So I want to share that with you guys today, man. Shalom to everybody that took part and who find value in what we provide here on the channel. With that, I'm gonna say shalom. Yep. Y'all know how we rocking, man. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, subscribe to the channel if you do find value here at the source. With that I say shalom. We out.
Look here, I be on a paper chase. I'm all about my cheddar. I ain't touching the mic if it ain't 5 G's or better. I plan to never fall short. Again, I won't gain. Woody, I'ma tell you, no pain, no gain. I hustle hard for what I want, that's how I get it. I struggle hard, and if it's out there, I'm gon' get it. If you see CMR, a $sign on the CD, somewhere on there you'll see featuring the BG. Me and my nigga B, like Suge and Pop, we getting our shine on all the way to the top. Look, ain't no stopping us, boy, don't try. When you hear once, it ain't no secret you going by. You could lie about this, stunt about that. You can't dodge these 50 shots, I'm about the red tat-tat. Ain't nothing changed, still a bust a wig splitter. Straight hustle for my cheese, I'm a money go get about my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate kill 'em. I'm about my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate kill 'em. It's all about Benjamin, that's all I wanna have. Ducked off in my house with a hoe taking a bubble bath. Sparkling marble, covering all my room floors. I'm made in a bathing suit, doing my house chores. Do not disturb sign on my bedroom door, cause my dick getting ate by my #1 whore. Look, I'm money hungry, about acting a donkey. No longer a junkie, I got rid of that monkey. I'm cheeky, I don't want you fucking with my shit. My neck and my knuckles covered with crushed out shit. Sparkling gold cover my motherfucking grill. Pockets filled with big head $100 bills. Fucking up this rap game with these wicked rap skills. And ain't far from making G's to making meals. I'm a trill BG, uptown hard hitter. On the real, my nigga, I'm a money go get about my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate kill 'em. About my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody try to stop you, kill 'em. Oh, I gotta get it, gotta grab it, gotta have it. Like snorting dope or snorting coke, it's a habit. I gotta see it, gotta feel it, quick to spin it. Shoot dice all day with my niggas trying to win it. I rap hustle, cause I'm a hustling ass nigga. Also a get told about busting some ass nigga. So you come play with me, about my cheese, you gotta go fool. In a casket, 6 BDs, selling tapes and CDs like selling pick 3s. Rang up 1 million sales, we didn't hit the lottery. I'm a Benjamin chaser, player hater eraser. Police have no case cause I do murders without a trace. I'm almost at home, I done passed 3rd base. I'm playing with 5 figures, but when I get 6, I'm straight. If I catch your bitch down bad, I'ma hit her. Paper chasing nigga, BG, a money go get about my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody try to stop you, kill 'em. I'm about my paper, my cheese. So before my eyes close, I want my greens to add up to 6 zeros. Get your betty nigga, somebody play a hate split 'em. Get your betty nigga, somebody try to stop you, kill 'em. I'm about my betty nigga, I'm about my betty, by all means necessary. I'm about my betty nigga, I'm about my betty, by all means necessary. All about the Benjamin, it's all about the green, the motherfucking loop. BG, I get mine on, I get my grind on, I get my shine on.